All right, now we're being recorded. All right, so what makes an accessible document? I've got this list here to show a few things, really kind of best practices on creating an accessible document. Again, this will not be a all-inclusive list or an all-inclusive training for every little tiny minutia when it comes to creating an accessible document, but these are the majority of the things that people have headaches with. Things like heading structure, list structure, alt text, creating basic data tables, appropriate link text when you're linking in documents, color contrast, writing in plain language, and actually creating a document title. These are the easiest things to do, and again, they create the least amount of headaches for people using assistive technology. So we're going to talk about the heading structure. Styles or the heading structure create the document structure. In the styles menu, there are many options, specifically the headings styles, headings H1 through H6. The styles of the document structure allows for the document to be navigated by assistive technology efficiently. Those heading structures will set up a structure for the document for people using assistive technologies like screen readers to be able to flow through the document, to be able to understand that document in the way that it was meant. And I'll show you how you can access these styles through the Home tab in the Styles menu. Some of these instructions here on the screen will also have keyboard shortcuts, and I'll try to, speak those out when they come, just to kind of help for those people with low sight or no sight to be able to get into these menus. To get into the Styles menu, it's just the Alt key, HL, on that. So in your Styles menu in the top of the screen there, on your Microsoft Word, you have these different styles up there. H1 through H6 are the most common. We recommend not going any higher or lower than H4, just because for web accessibility, it's kind of become a standard not to go anything higher than H1 through 4, just to keep that standard even all the way across. Oh, I'm not sure what just happened there. And actually, I'm going to, once we get through this little slideshow, I'm going to actually open up a Word document to show you a few of these features, to give you a little bit more information on those. Lists are another structural element to a Word document. A lot of us are familiar with lists, the bullet points, whether they're numbered or not numbered. That's going to be your ordered and unordered list. To kind of break up the content, simplify it out to make it easier to understand. Specifically when you're creating a list, make sure you use the built-in tools to create them. That little bullet point key at the very top of your screen, I'll show on the next slide, but that enables the software to mark up that list and that structure properly. Using things like just like the plus minus sign or a dash to create these lists can cause problems with screen readers. They don't understand that. It looks like a different line or actually a different paragraph as opposed to an ordered or unordered list. And we'll kind of show you how you get into that. It's just through your Home tab, the paragraph menu, bullets, and then you have the option for numbered, multi-level lists, etc. Your key shortcuts will be Alt-H, U for bullets, N for numbering, M for a multi-level list, and that's just really when it breaks out into an outline. And these are those keys there for that. It's just kind of showing you what the buttons look like. The first one there is your typical bulleted list, your numbered list, and then a multi-level list where you can break it out to more items. Does anybody have any questions on the heading structure or list? Kind of a little example here, just kind of show you what a bulleted list and the heading structure for a file should look like. And again, this is the typical outline that we learned in middle school. As you see, you have your heading structure, heading 1, and then it breaks into heading 2, breaks in further to heading 3. That's the same type of structure and the same reading style that you would think to keep in mind when you're creating an accessible Word document. You don't want to start with a heading 2 and then go to a heading 1. You want to keep that structure intact, just so that when people are flipping through with a screen reader, they can jump from one section to another. They can read each one of those headings and then find out what content they want to read and break into the paragraphs or those further headings. Next topic will be really talking about alternative text and text equivalents. Alt text is text that helps people that are non-visual or low vision to understand a piece of content or an image. So if you are describing a particular situation and you have a photo there to give a little visual representation of that image, you want to use alternative text, because if that image has some type of value for that language in that document, then the person that's trying to understand that piece of that document would need that information as well. If they're low vision, they're using a screen reader. The items that can hold alt text are primarily your photos and illustrations. Images of text, that's like your word art, different shapes, a triangle, square, if they're used to explain a situation, different charts, smart art, other embedded objects. Typical best practice is to try to limit things like word art, smart art, and things of the like, just because it's really difficult to explain that information with a small piece of alt text. So if you can explain the information without using a chart, a diagram, smart art, etc., it's usually best to do so. But then those alt text features are there for if that information needs to be represented through one of those means. You do have the option for the alt text to further that information. Specifically, you want it to be concise, meaningful. You want that alt text to explain what that image is representing in the simplest terms possible. To access these alt text options, you can go to the app menu, right-click, Format Picture, left-click on that, and then go to Layouts and Properties. The key shortcuts for this will be Shift F10, O, Shift, and then you can tab through a right arrow to Layout and Properties. And you can just tab through those menus. And just kind of give you an idea of where that information is. You can right-click on an image, click on Format Picture, and then as you see on the right there, that little blue square will show you where to click. And then you have two boxes here. Rule of thumb, the title isn't exactly necessary. The title is a way to represent what an image is when you hover over it. Kind of an issue a lot of times with screen readers. Sometimes they'll try to read it, sometimes they won't. Typically, we do not use that title field for anything in particular, but the description below it is where it's most important. That's where you really want to put your alt text in there. And again, put it in the description, not the title. Oh, and when you're using the accessibility checker, this is a question that we get quite a bit. A lot of times it'll tell you an error, like if a table is missing alt text. Just ignore that, mainly because most tables, if they're done properly, and we'll get to that in the next section, they really won't need alt text. Alt text is really if you're representing some very detailed information that may not be able to be represented in a basic data table. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? All right. So we've got basic data tables. Going to the next page, we'll see a little bit more about that. But really, tables are used to display data in an organized way. The best practice is to make it as simple as possible. Don't merge, don't split cells, because this breaks the structure of the data table and makes it more difficult for AT, such as screen readers, to tab through the content. So if you were to combine two heading fields or two rows, two columns, etc., then tabbing through becomes very confusing for users of assistive technology. Best case is to leave a cell blank rather than merging it into another cell. You want to insert a table as opposed to drawing a table or using that graph paper on the table feature. I'm sorry, I got a message there. It's to insert the table as opposed to using the graph paper or drawing a table on the screen, just because it makes it a lot easier. And then, yes, the PowerPoint will be available after the webinar. In order to get into table properties, into the row tab, couple of things to know when you're setting up a table, just to make it the most accessible it can be, is allow the row to break across pages and then repeat as the header on the top of each page. And I'll show you where these settings are here in just a moment. But for what we have here is a basic data table. As you see, it has a clearly defined top row, that's your headings, and then your information is represented underneath. And again, so let's say that you merged a few cells there at the top, then it could break off the structure. So you have column 1, row 2 is Jane Doe, etc. You can tab through this and actually disseminate that information a lot easier, as long as it's considered, as long as it's kept basic and easy to understand. Again, some little tips: don't split or merge cells, no matter how bad you want to, because when it's being converted to a PDF, it will be broken. And a lot of times, and especially in the education field and such, we convert everything to PDF just so it's a portable format that's easy to share between people. And to keep things accessible, this is where it really starts, is when you first create the document in Word. Again, don't use the draw a table option, use the insert table. I'm kind of showing you where that is here. When I mentioned the graph paper, is that little box, all those rows of boxes there in the table feature, table property. Creating the table through there, or using the draw table function, which is actually where I've circled insert table. Right underneath that is draw table. And that essentially allows you to take your mouse cursor and literally draw lines on a page to create the table. By drawing a table, you break the structure of that table and make it a lot more difficult to bounce through the items in the table. And after you create the table, you can go right-click on the table and go to Table Properties. As you see, I have the box checked. Unchecked Allow Row to break across pages, and then Repeat Header Row at the top of each page. Those are really the only two settings that you really need to focus on for your tables. Just the Repeat Header Row at the top of each page helps out when you have a table on the page and say this only has 3 entries, but if you had 50 lines or 50 rows of data and it would bounce over to the next page, unless that header row also went over to the next page, then somebody using a screen reader might have difficulty understanding what data is being represented. So having that header row break across pages is very important. Does anybody have any questions in regards to data tables? You're welcome to speak up or put your questions in chat at any time. I can always bounce back and answer any questions. All right. Next important thing, and this right here bounces across not just Word documents, but if you work in any field, like as far as like web development, or you're putting links up on the internet, or any other documents or PowerPoints and things like that, is you really want the link text to be easy to understand. A lot of people type in the URL, hit spacebar, and then Word automatically converts that to a link, just like that top link I have there. But typing that full URL can be confusing for users of assistive technology, just because a link like that with a screen reader would be read out as https://faast.org/ and it would read out that entire thing one letter at a time. Or it would try to understand what words are and really butcher a lot of that stuff, especially when you're using shorthand like our acronym for FAAST for our organization. It would be a little harder for the screen reader to understand that link. Better practice is to actually use simple text. So, for example, like my helpful link text there, FAAST brochure download. That link is the exact same as the one above it. It's just easier to understand and allows the screen reader to understand what that is, and will tell the user of that assistive technology that that is a FAAST brochure download, and they can access that link and download the brochure from that link. It makes it a lot simpler for creating these links. And the easiest way to do that is at the ribbon at the top. You have the option for insert. You go over to the button that says hyperlink, and then you have a little box pop up. Now this little box has a text to display section at the top, and then an address section at the bottom. Those are the two places where you would put that information in. There are other ways to create hyperlinks. This way kind of gives you that reminder for the text to display. So you can put the text to display at the top, just like that FAAST brochure download, and then put your link at the bottom and hit OK, and it'll actually put that link in the document for you. So I have a question here, that the helpful link, sometimes difficult for somebody with developmental disabilities or learning disabilities, and putting those words such as click to download, view, etc. Thoughts on that? It's one of the better practices for that simple link text. Let me try to find a way to put this. Creating an accessible document is trying to make it accessible for as many people as possible. Putting text on a link says click here can be helpful in some situations, and it's really knowing your audience. Just because with screen readers, like a lot of screen readers will tell them that this is a link. So to put text in the link saying that it's a link creates a lot of redundancies. However, like putting text in a document saying that to click on the link does help with people with developmental and learning disabilities and to help them understand what that content is. So I just advise you to really focus on who your audience is and make your document accessible for them. If you have to make more than one document for more than one group of people, try to avoid that. But if necessary, you can. Just try to keep it as simple as possible. And I'm actually going to get into language here in just a moment as far as like helpful text and such. Good question. Anybody else? Another issue that comes up. Oh, I'd follow up. Yes. Okay, I got you. Yeah, it's really that again, just focus on your audience and the content of the document. If it makes sense to explain what a link is, definitely do so. One other accessibility issue that I've seen, especially on the internet, just browsing websites and stuff, is color contrast. And that's when you're comparing the color of the text versus the background. You have black and white that has a really good color contrast between the two and makes it easy to see the text. If there is very low contrast between the two colors, it can make the text very difficult to see for people with low vision or people with color blindness or other visual disabilities. Minimum contrast is a 4.5 to 1. If you're curious about the contrast between two colors of maybe a logo or an image, there are a lot of tools online that you can put in two different colors, and it'll actually tell you the contrast between them and give you hints as far as, ways to make your color contrast a little better, maybe darken up one color or lighten another, or kind of change the shade altogether will help with some color contrast. Just to kind of give you an example of what a 4.5 to 1 contrast is as compared to black and white text, 21 to 1, or going down to the pink or the very light gray below at a 1.5 to 1 ratio. That's getting pretty rough. Contrast really isn't much of an issue when it comes to documents. It mostly has to do when you're creating graphics, drawing up a brochure for your organization or school, or a flyer of some sort, or with web design. It's really focusing on those contrasts. And again, there are a lot of tools online that you can put in colors. You can put in the hexadecimal codes or the RGB codes and actually pull up the colors and see how well you stand when it comes to color contrast. Again, the 4.5 to 1 is the minimum. You really don't want to go anything below that. But again, the higher the contrast ratio, the better for people with low sight. Anybody have questions on the contrast? All right. Plain language has been one thing that I have personally had trouble with when I'm creating documents, when I'm writing papers and such. I've worked on a pretty large vocabulary growing up through school and such, and it hurts when I can't use it a lot of times. But when it really comes down to it, it's really making the document accessible to a lot of people. We kind of say that we want this document to be able to be read by an elementary school student, somebody that reads on, say, a 3rd to 4th grade level. Because if you make it readable for that person, it's understandable for anyone else. Just kind of two example sentences here that mean the exact same thing. When the process of freeing a vehicle that has been stuck results in ruts or holes, the operator will fill the rut or hole created by such activity before removing the vehicle from the immediate area. That sounds like something you would find in a work manual of some sort. But if you were to take that and clear it up, make it into plain language, you could have one short, simple sentence that means the exact same thing. If you make a hole while freeing a stuck vehicle, you must fill the hole before you drive away. That is able to be understood by a wider range of people and therefore makes this document a lot more accessible for people reading it, specifically people with developmental or learning disabilities. That makes it very helpful. Kind of moving through, this is really kind of finalizing the document and some little tips for making sure that the document, again, is accessible. And this is more not so much accessible inside the document, but accessible for the computer program or the person using that computer to understand what that document is and how to find that document. A lot of people who use speech to text or voice controls in a computer are searching for a document. If that document is got some strange naming convention where it has, you know, a word, the date, V1 for version 1 or V2, and you kind of put all that together in one word, it makes the document inaccessible for searching on a computer, because unless that individual knows what that document happened to be named, it's hard to find that document. So you really want to work on these titles to be clear, simple, concise, and to really explain what that document is. There are really two titles in a document. The visible title, which is inside the document, which is your H1 tag at the very top. And then in the properties of the document, you can also create a title in Word. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But by going into File, Info, and then in Properties, the short code for that for keyboard is Alt-F-I-S. But when you hit the File button at the top left, you click on Info on the left bar, it brings you up this screen here. Now, depending on your version of Word, the newer versions I think look a little bit different now, but they both have this little section on the right that says Title. By adding a title to the document, this is even different than the file name, but it allows that document to be searched by this title. So you can have a separate title than a file name. So if you need file names for structure in a folder, you can still title a document to make that document easily searchable through that computer. One of the final things to mention is Microsoft has a built-in accessibility checker that you can use to just scan the document and find accessibility issues. It usually sets 3 types of issues: errors, warnings, and tips. Errors are some of the things that will make the document difficult to understand for people with disabilities. These are the things you need to fix. Warnings are some that can make it difficult. Not all warnings are created equal. Some are important, some are not so much at all. These are the things you need to try to work on, making sure that these are accessible. And then you have the tips. The tips are just little items that may or may not even be important to that document. It's really just kind of a reminder to look at certain features just to make sure that those individual items are simple, concise, and easy to understand for people with disabilities, people using assistive technology like screen readers to understand that document. Again, it's a place to start. It's not always right. It's great that Microsoft put it in there, but a lot of times that accessibility checker can really get you going in circles and provide no actual benefits. So kind of use it as a guide, not an end-all be-all tool. The final most important thing with a document, if you want to save it as a PDF, I have seen some people do this the wrong way, and it really undoes all of the good work you did with making a document accessible. I've seen so many people go to print and print as PDF. Yeah, it's quick, it's easy. You can usually get in there real fast with a Control-P keyboard strokes. But when you do that, all that structure that you put in there, the H1 headings, the alt text on the images, all that stuff, you just delete it when you created that print to PDF. So the proper way to save a document as a PDF is to actually go to File, Save As, and then go to this drop-down menu of Save As Type and actually select PDF. If you have Adobe installed on your computer, there may be an option in there for Adobe PDF, or even on your ribbon bar on Microsoft Word. We'll even show you some options to convert it to an Adobe PDF. And I'll even show you, I'm actually going to jump into Microsoft Word and show you a couple of things to explain some of this stuff. But before I do that, definitely want any questions here so that when I go through this document and show you a few things, that I'll be able to answer any of your questions. All right, so on your screen, you should see what I've got here. This is a Microsoft document I just kind of threw together just to show you a few things. Specifically, you have your heading here at the top. This is the H1 tag. In order to create that, and actually need to take this little pointer off. In order to actually create this heading 1, I've just typed in the text heading 1 and went up here to the top on your styles bar and selected heading 1, which changed that style. Underneath it, I put some paragraph text. I put a heading 2, use the same method, and just using the styles bar here. This particular one right here, heading 2 with a different style. Something I've seen a lot of people do with Word documents or any document in general, especially web design, is use headings to create style. So if, say here, I wanted this to be bigger than heading 2, I could have used a heading 1 and it would have been larger. That in and of itself is very bad structure because you should not ever have a heading 1 after a 2. Most documents typically only have a heading 1, which is used as a title field in that document. If you want to create a heading 2, but you just want it to be a larger text, a great way to do that is to create a new style. The way to do that is up here at the top on your styles bar. There's a little arrow down that drops this whole guy down, and you can actually create a new style. But doing that, it brings up a little box. You can name the style whatever you want to. So we can name this style, we'll just say test head, and then modify it. So you can actually change the style. You can link it however you need to, characters, paragraph text, etc. You can change the colors of this style if you wanted to. Change it to green, change the font, make it bold and underlined. And you can add this style to the gallery, which puts it up in the top ribbon at the top. And you can say only in this document or any new documents based on this template. So if you want to create this as a template, you can actually put that in there. You hit OK, it changes it. Neat thing about this is, it gave you that bigger text that you wanted for the styling. Well, if we come in here up to the review tab at the top, and oh, wrong button. It's been a minute, view. And if you go to the view tab at the top and go to outline, it actually will show you the structure of your document and show you how this is listed out. So you have your heading 1, you have the paragraph text underneath that, you have your heading 2, and as you see, this is directly underneath. This is also considered a heading 2. So when you're using assistive technologies, the assistive technology will read this as a heading 2. It has the same value as this heading 2 up above, but this right here, gives you that visual style to be able to put your own artistic flair on the document, but without destroying the structure of the document. And again, you have your structure, you have your heading 2, some text, heading 2, and then it breaks down to another heading 3, and keeps that structure of the document proper, but allows you to change those styles as you want to in order to give you that artistic flair, but still keep the document accessible. Neat thing about this, again, is you can save these styles in your list up top, and you can even set, so you can have heading 1 blue, heading 1 black, so you can have different types of headings, or heading 1 bold, heading 1 italicized. You can create different headings so you still have that structure, but are able to give it that artistic flair that you want in that document. One final thing, as you see, we've just got a little image here. It's the FAAST logo. And I'm going to go in here and edit the alt text. So you can right click on the image, go to edit alt text down here at the bottom, and it'll give you a little box up here that you can add that alt text in. And I want to show you this one little feature here that Microsoft has that I always love clicking this button just to see what Microsoft will put in. It'll generate a description for that image. It's kind of smart, but not so much. It's sometimes it's pretty accurate, but it'll kind of give you an idea of what to put in that alt text. So I'm just going to generate a script description, and as it says a drawing of a face. We know that's not correct. Good thing it does put you here that it's automatically generated with low confidence. I have pretty low confidence in it myself. But for alt text, one rule of thumb is not to tell people it's an image or a photo because their screen reader will already tell them it's an image. And for your alt text, you can put something, make it simple, concise, yet descriptive of what the image is. And we can say it's the FAAST logo. And a good description of this logo would be a person in a wheelchair moving forward with the state of Florida and a blue oval. And the words and the letters FAAST with the words Florida's Assistive Technology Program in that. I'm not going to type it all out, but use your judgment. Describe the image the best you can. A lot of alt text tools have a feature here to mark as decorative. So if it's something like a swoosh across the page that has no basis on the information whatsoever, it's just there for a little styled element, you can select that, and screen readers won't even pick it up. It'll just skip right over it and just say it's a descriptive, decorative image that means nothing. Trying to think of anything else to hit on. A couple little rules. When it comes to font size, try not to go any smaller than a size 12 font. This just makes it easier for people with low vision to be able to see these letters and the words. Anything smaller than size 12 gets to be very difficult to read and understand. Fonts that are good to use. Calibri is one that Microsoft sets as really a default font. Another is Arial, is a good font to use just because it's easy to read, the letters are well defined, screen readers, portable like handheld magnifiers, and these other images, other devices that'll actually take an image of the screen and use software to understand that screen and read it out to the user, can understand this type of text a lot better than, say, if you were using an Algerian font that has some stylized elements to it that, again, will make it a little more difficult to read. The most used fonts for assistive technology and to make it accessible would be your Calibri, Arial, Helvetica, which is I do not have it in this loaded, but another one that's available across the board is Open Sans. Calibri, Arial, these are copyrighted fonts. They may not be available on every tool, but Open Sans is available just about anywhere that you would use text, which is a really good go-to text for accessibility to make it easy to see, easy to read, and understand. That really concludes it, unless anybody has any questions, suggestions. And I want to thank everyone for attending. This will be recorded and it will be posted to YouTube by the end of the day. I'll send the link out to everyone that's registered for the webinar, and we'll also likely send it out sometime probably later in the week or next week for our email newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for that, I definitely recommend you sign up. If you confused about the sign-up process on the newsletter, you can go to our website, FAAST.org, or you can just shoot me a quick email and I can add you to the list if you want to receive those. And again, if you have any questions, I'm all ears. You've got my email attached to this, so if you want to shoot me an email later on, you're more than welcome to do so. I mean, you're all very welcome. I hope everybody has a great week. And yeah, there will be another webinar that will expand on this going into Adobe for PDF documents, likely in the next month or so. Or if you have any questions on that, as far as making an Adobe document accessible, shoot those emails to me. It'll help me kind of prepare that webinar and that training a little bit. Or if you have anything else that, technology related, you would just more, you have questions about accessibility, whether it come to things like web design, accessible PowerPoints, things like that, just definitely shoot me those emails. And